Om Namo Narayanaya. We are continuing our way through Chapter 7, Scheduled Incarnations with Specific Functions. As I said in the last video, that was verses 1 through 19. I find this very, very confusing. And I also want to know if these incarnations are mentioned in other writings. Or maybe they're just mentioned in other books outside of Canto 2. I don't know. But it's just going by so fast and there's so many details. I feel overwhelmed even reading this and trying to just read it so it makes sense. That's me. Your comments and all. Here we go. Verse 20. As the incarnation of Manu, the Lord became the descendant of the Manu dynasty and ruled over the miscreant kingly order, subduing them by his powerful wheel weapon. Undeterred in all circumstances, his rule was characterized by his glorious fame, which spread over the three lokas, and above them to the planetary system of Satyaloka, the topmost in the universe. The Lord, in his incarnation of Dhanvantari, very quickly cures the diseases of the ever-diseased living entities simply by his fame personified, and only because of him do the demigods achieve long lives. Thus, Lord Vishnu becomes ever glorified. He also extracted a share from the sacrifices, and it is he only who inaugurated the medical science or knowledge of medicine in the universe. When the ruling administrators, who are known as Kshatriyas, turned away from the path of the absolute truth, being desirous to suffer in hell, the Lord, in his incarnation as the sage Parashurama, uprooted those unwanted kings who appeared as the thorns of the earth. Thus he thrice 7 times uprooted the Kshatriyas with his keenly sharpened chopper. Due to his causeless mercy upon all living entities within the universe, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with his planetary extensions, appeared in the family of Maharaja Ikshvaku as the lord of his internal potency, Sita. Under the order of his father, Maharaja Dasharatha, he entered the forest and lived there for considerable years with his wife and younger brother. Ravana, who was very materially powerful, with 10 heads on his shoulder, committed a great offense against him, and thus ultimately vanquished. Lord Vishnu, Ramakandra, being aggrieved for his distant intimate friend Sita, glanced over the city of the enemy Ravana with his red-hot eyes like those of Hara, who wanted to burn the kingdom of heaven. The great ocean, trembling in fear, gave him his way because its family members, the aquatics like the sharks, snakes, and crocodiles, were being burnt by the heat of the angry red-hot eyes of the Lord. When Ravana was engaged in the battle, the trunk of the elephant which carried the king of heaven, Indra, broke in pieces, having collided with the chest of Ravana, and the scattered broken parts illuminated all directions. Ravana therefore felt proud of his prowess and began to loiter in the midst of the fighting soldiers, thinking himself the conqueror of all directions. But his laughter, overtaken by joy, along with his very air of life, suddenly ceased with the tingling sound of the bow of Ramakandra. When the world is overburdened by the fighting strength of kings who have no faith in God, the Lord, just to diminish the distress of the world, descends with his plenary portion. The Lord comes in his original form with beautiful black hair, and just to expand his transcendental glories, he acts extraordinarily. No one can properly estimate how great he is. There is no doubt about Lord Krishna's being the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, how is it possible for him to kill a giant demon like Putana when he was just on the lap of his mother, to overturn a cart with his legs when he was only 3 months old, or to uproot a pair of Arjuna trees so high that they touched the sky when he was only crawling? All these activities are possible for anyone other than the Lord himself. Then also when the cowherd boys and their animals drank their poison water of the river Yamuna, and after the Lord in his childhood revived them by his merciful glance, just to purify the water of the river Yamuna, he jumped into it as if playing and chastised the venomous Kalia snake, which was there lurking, its tongue emitting waves of poison. Who can perform such Herculean tasks but the Supreme Lord? On the very night of the day of the chastisement of the Kalia snake, when the inhabitants of Vrajabuni were sleeping freely. There was a forest fire ablaze due to dry leaves, and it appeared that all the inhabitants were sure to meet their death. But the Lord, along with Balarama, saved them by simply closing his eyes. Such is the superhuman activities of the Lord. When the cowherd woman, Krishna's foster mother, Yashoda, was trying to tie the hands of her son with ropes, she found the rope to be always insufficient in length, and when she finally gave up, the Lord Krishna by and by opened his mouth, wherein the mother found all the universes situated. Seeing this, she was doubtful in her mind, but she was convinced in a different manner of the mystic nature of her son. Lord Krishna saved his foster father, Nanda Maharaja, from the fear of the demigod Varuna, and released the cowherd boys from the caves of the mountain, for they were placed there by the son of Maya. Also to the inhabitants of Vrindavana, who were busy working during daytime and sleeping soundly at night because of their hard labor in the day, Lord Krishna awarded promotion to the highest planet in the spiritual sky. All these acts are transcendental and certainly prove, without any doubt, his Godhead. When the cowherd men of Vrindavana, under instruction of Krishna, stopped offering sacrifice to the heavenly king Indra, the whole tract of land known as Vraja was threatened with being washed away by constant heavy rains for 7 days. Lord Krishna, out of his causeless mercy upon the inhabitants of Vraja, held up the hill known as Govardhana with one hand only, although he was only 7 years old. He did this to protect the animals from the onslaught of water. When the Lord was engaged in his pastimes with the rasa dance in the forests of Vrindavana, enlivening the sexual desires of the wives of the inhabitants by sweet and melodious songs, a demon of the name Shankakura, a rich follower of the treasurer of heaven, Kuvera, kidnapped the damsels, and the Lord severed his head from his trunk. All demonic personalities like Pralamba, Dhanuka Baka, Keshi, Arishta, Kanura, Mushtika, Kuvalayapida, Elephant, Kamsa, Yavana, Narakashura, and Pandraka, great marshals like Shalva, Devi, the monkey, and Balvala, Dantavakra, the 7 bulls, Shambhara, Viduratha, and Rukmi, as also great warriors like Kamboja, Matsya, Kuru, Srinjaya, and Kekaya would all fight victoriously, either with the Lord Hari directly, or with him under his names of Baladeva, Arjuna, Bhima, etc. And the demons thus being killed would attain either the impersonal Ramajyoti or his personal abode in the Vaikuntha planets. The Lord himself, in his incarnation as the son of Vasudeva, will consider his compilation of the Vedic literature to be very difficult for the less intelligent persons with short life, and thus he will divide the tree of Vedic knowledge into different branches according to the circumstances of the particular age. When the atheists, after being well versed in the Vedic scientific knowledge, annihilate inhabitants of different planets, flying unseen in the sky on well-built rockets prepared by the great scientist Maya, the Lord will bewilder their minds by dressing himself attractively as Buddha, and will preach on sub-religious principles. We will pause here, verse 37. So, 2 thoughts. 1, Buddha got mentioned. That's kind of cool. I like that. I like seeing that. Because that ties Buddhism into Hinduism. Buddha is now a form of God, an incarnation of God. Now, the question then becomes, was the Srimad Bhagavatam written before Buddha and then had this line inserted, as often happens in texts, or was this written afterwards? Second, is this validated in any other source? And I know people will say Vasudeva is speaking the words of God, understandable, but for the skeptic, multiple sources are good. Does anyone else verify this? The other thing, though, having practiced only a little bit of Buddhism, I often found that there was not a lot of talk of the gods. It was kind of downplayed. And I don't think I ever heard anyone say in Buddhism, in the Buddhism circles, that Buddha was an incarnation of God, or in this case of Vishnu. No one ever talked about that. And they do talk about many Buddhas. Like I remember seeing like the Kalki Buddha and different Buddhas. But to say that Buddha was God makes this Buddhism a very God-focused organization, right? But yet there is no God in it so much. It's very interesting. I've always found that kind of a funny thing with Buddhism. Like, yeah, here it is. He's clearly God, according to the other religion that he comes from, that he considered himself a part. Even in Buddhism, they talk about, but yet, he has a Thich Nhat Hanh, and he doesn't talk about Vishnu. I always kind of, like, it was like, are you trying to hide something? Like, the concept of God, is that bad to you? It's always very, I don't know, left a bad taste in my mouth for Buddhism. That's another point. This isn't a Buddhist channel, but it got tied in, so. I also wanted to talk about, there is a lot of talk in this little bit I read where he was fighting a snake, he was working with a forest fire. That is all descriptions of Lord Krishna as a boy. The little blue boy that you see all the time. That's it. That's the description. It kind of came out of nowhere because all the other incarnations are like, he was the fish incarnation, 2 sentences, and then we have this whole bunch about Krishna. If you want a clear version of the life of Krishna, there is a 2-volume set of books. It's called Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Volume 1 and Volume 2 by Srila Prabhupada. They're about, a little under 400 pages each, 2 hardcover books. They're big size, like this is a big size book. I'm reading the first one right now, actually. I just recently finished the part on the snake. It's not the most poetic stuff, but it turns that story that we just read and stories about Krishna into prose form like a novel. So it becomes really easy to read. And I've mentioned these books before on this channel. If you're interested in the Krishna story, as far as I know, those are the best 2 books out there that take Krishna and synthesize it all down. Strangely, I was looking in Volume 2 the other day, and it looks like they don't talk about his death. I'm not sure why that is. I don't know. Maybe they do and just gloss on it, but I didn't see a chapter heading on his death. But it starts from before his birth and goes all the way up. There might be another book out there which just gives the story of Krishna, just as a story. If there is, please recommend it to me. I would love to read it because it just isn't there. This is complicated. The Krishna books, wow, they're great. They're also super, super detailed. Just a concise story would be awesome. So, I'm going to stay with there, and thoughts, comments, anything. And we will finish this chapter in the next video. Thanks for hanging out with me. Questions, comments, all that stuff below. Like I said, this isn't a book talk. This isn't a, well, it could be a book talk, sort of. But it's not a book on tape. Just reading this amazing text to honor the Lord and to learn more about our religion, to learn more about ourselves as followers of God, as written about in these ancient texts, whether it's Shiva or Krishna or Vishnu or whatever. And then my casual thoughts here. Would love to hear your casual thoughts. So with that, I will say Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.